Okay, hello and welcome to our podcast on research data management and the new policy. My name is Jenny McHugh and I'm the research data manager at Lancaster University and introducing my colleague Jo.
Hiya, so I'm Joanne Fitzpatrick. I was up until very recently the research data manager here at Lancaster.
Yes, I'm very much following in her footsteps. Okay, so to begin with, we thought we'd talk a little bit about what open research is and why it's important. So, Jo, do you want to walk us through what open research is?
Okay, thank you. So I still work on the open research team here at Lancaster, and this is the third role that I've had on the team now. So I've got a bit of an overview of quite a lot of the work that we do. So open research in general is a set of principles and an ethos towards making open research that is funded mostly by public funding available to the public. And there's various strands that we split our team's work up into. And the main service that we have is our open access service that helps support making journal articles and conference papers open and available for anyone to read. And we also have a new focus on open monographs, so doing the same for books, academic books, although that looks very different. And that's the role that I currently have, is focused on open monographs. We also have our research data management services, and I'll let Jenny explain a bit more about that in a moment, because that's the focus of her role now. But I've also had experience on the team in bibliometrics and looking at citations analysis. So analysing the kind of publication metrics that are associated mostly with journal articles that we do the analysis for that. One day it'd be wonderful to be able to do that for data sets and books and everything. So we're working on that. So that's roughly what our team comprises of. That leads us nicely into the next question, I think, doesn't it? So if I ask this to you, so what is research data management?
So research data management is pretty much what it says on the tin, although the data bit is sometimes misleading. It basically refers to all information and data that's created during the research process. And we essentially try to look after how it's collected, analysed, stored, made secure, and then kind of archived for the future. So very much like the service is trying to advise researchers on how best to store data, organise it, kind of documenting the planning decisions that happen and making sure that we're thinking about the full life cycle of research and how to best look after that. And then at the end of the kind of research life cycle, thinking about what the outputs are, so which data is going to become long-term archived, so potentially put in a repository and made available and open access, if possible, or alternatively thinking about what data can't be shared for example, GDPR reasons, so personal data, depending on the study, and then, thinking about which things can be deleted or kind of not kept for long term. So the research data management service is very much trying to kind of like facilitate and help researchers to guide them through that process.
Can I ask you a follow-up question as well?
Of course.
Put you on the spot here. We're testing you through the medium of podcast recording.
Oh, God.
So when we say data and data sets, so what kind of thing does that include?
Well, so it pretty much includes everything that you could think that it might. So we like to think of the team actually more broadly as open access, as Jo said, looking after articles, monographs, conference papers, and then pretty much anything else that might be covered is being covered by RDMs, or research data management. So that might be something like a data set, so for example, an Excel spreadsheet or, other medium. It could be code, it could be grey literature, so if you wrote an abstract for a conference paper, you could make that open access. Or ideally, what we would love for people to start doing is when you make a data management plan for your project, making that open access as well would be covered by RDM as well. So pretty much anything and everything.
So I quite like the phrase to describe that, which I've only picked up recently, which is using the phrase beyond the article or beyond the paper or beyond the book.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that is beyond those in terms of research outputs, it's Jenny that you need for those.
We are beyond. I like to think that we're like next level open access.
Beyond, next level, yeah, I like it.
Great. So, I think we're now going to talk a little bit about the new policy. So over the past year, Jo's been putting this together, working very, very hard. So it's kind of real joy to have her here to talk about it. So would you be able to tell us a bit more about the new policy?
I can do, yeah, and it has been a joyful process because I think the first thing to say is that this policy is very much been a group effort. So I've spoken to really anyone who will talk to me about it, whether they're interested in the content of it or not. And it's been a nice process of having lots of one-on-one consultation meetings with various different colleagues across Lancaster to put this together, because research data management, it's not just me and Jenny in the library sort of saying what we think you should do. The idea is that it will help make the research process better and more efficient and go more smoothly and avoid kind of data disasters as well. And we can only do that with input from everyone that's involved with data through the full life cycle of the research process. So I've spoken to lots of lovely people across Lancaster to put this together. So lots of professional service colleagues such as information governance and colleagues in ISS and research services. And as I say, anyone who wants to talk to me. Groups of researchers as well. So we've been to research committees that are attached to each faculty. And a lot of what I've put into the policy is based on, I guess, frequently asked questions that I get from researchers. Some of the most common things that are difficult to understand and apply to research projects. I've taken those almost anecdotally, really, although there have been real data consultations with real researchers over the number of years that I've been in post and built those into the policy as well. So quite enjoyed the process. Met lots of people and got to think about their needs in this area. So we've talked a little bit about some of the key points that are in there. So what did these colleagues I spoke to say? It's a bit like a game show, isn't it? Can you guess? Guess what they said? They wanted me to change in it. So number one is probably we're changing the title of it. And what I've tried to do is these frequently asked questions that I've spoken about, most of them were actually within the policy, but were not very clear. So quite difficult to understand because the policy's 10 years old now, and it's been in existence since RDM was born around 10 years ago. So we were in a lot of ways an early adopter here at Lancaster of research data management practices. But that meant some of the language in there was quite dated or it wasn't as clear. So after 10 years of supporting research data management here, it's not been me the whole time. But we've really refined our offer and our thinking. So most of it is just clarifying a lot of this. So one key way in which we've clarified what this policy covers is by changing the titles. So it's now no longer the Research Data Management Policy. It's the Research Data Sharing and Archiving Policy. So that just makes it very clear what we're actually covering. And that's one of the things I wanted to make clear in the policy is the difference between active research data that's in the middle of that research data life cycle, which Jenny will have been learning all about. So data that's being actively modified is a very different thing to the data that appears at the end, which is your data output that will be shared, archived, published. So this is making clear that this policy covers your data output. And we use data in that very broad term to mean anything that's beyond the article or the book. So there's lots to say, and I'm going to try really hard to be concise because I'm a very detailed person. And I have gone through this policy with a fine-tooth comb and made a lot of things clearer. So that's really the focus of this, is improving the clarity of what researchers need to do. In addition to that, there's no changes in terms of the mandates that we have. What we've changed is included a couple of strong encouragements or endorsements for, and that will pave the way for kind of long-term development in RDM. So in a lot of ways, because like I say, I've been going through this in a lot of detail, I almost feel like I'm playing a really elaborate game of chess here. The number of people that I've spoken to and that I'm trying to make this policy work for all of them, and kind of thinking long-term as well, what I need to put in place to get us to where we want to be.
Yeah.
I've decided to include some encouragements that will support those long-term developments. So these are almost my opening chess moves. I don't actually know how to play chess. I'm not very good at it. But this I can do. So there's a couple of new encouragements in there. So this will include an encouragement to share and publish data management plans.
Yeah.
So rather than those just being a Word document that never gets seen or updated again, to say that sharing those at least between groups of researchers, if not publishing them online, is a good thing. And we like that, and to encourage it. So there's a couple of new introductions of things that we endorse in there. Another example is data access statements. So I've talked for quite a while now, so I'm going to try and stop talking a bit and just ask Jenny if she can tell us what a data access statement is. It's another test.
Thanks for the question, Jo. Yeah, so a data access statement, similar to kind of RDM, is very much what it says it is on the tin, in that it's a very clear, brief statement saying where you can access the data that's been used during the research process. And so usually they're included in outputs / we would really love it if researchers started to kind of more actively include it in their research. Just because it's really good practice, so that people that are reading the paper that are interested and engaged with the research topic can go and replicate your results or potentially use that research themselves because they're interested in it and want to build upon research. So it's very much kind of encouraging lots of the principles of open research that we really like, of like innovation, transparency, accessibility, all of these things. So yeah, hopefully I passed the test.
That was a great answer, 20 points.
Oh, thank you.
So within the policy it now states that we'd encourage you to include a data access statement even when the publisher doesn't require it, because we like them, they are good. For all the reasons that Jenny was able to identify. I'm sorry, I'm making loads of noise on the table.
I'm very aware.
Just clicking my rings and banging the table. I'm a terrible fidgeter, honestly, which means I'm not a very good podcaster.
We're just so excited about RDM, that's what it is.
Getting into it. Okay. So I think we have some more things to say about the policy. So should we go on to the next question?
Yes, so I think we covered the key points. So yeah, what are the main things that you would like researchers to be aware of? Both new things and also old things to reiterate potentially.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Because as I say, the mandates themselves haven't changed. So the main thing that researchers need to be aware of is that the policy has at all times, since 2013, in fact, mandated that all research projects at Lancaster need to have a data management plan. So we need researchers to write down somewhere in a Word document, that's what data management plans currently look like, just record somewhere the decisions that you're making about your non-article and non-book outputs, the decisions that you're making about the data that you're working with during the research process. And that's really important for a lot of reasons. So it's ensuring that you're thinking about things as early as possible in the research process, which will help make things go more smoothly later. The purpose of doing that is also to record any justifications you have for if you can't share that data or other output openly, if there's reasons for you to keep that data closed or to restrict access to that. Those justifications are recorded in a data management plan. It's also really helpful for us if you can share your data management plans with us. So currently we only see them if you would like them to be reviewed, and more about our research data services at the end. But there's lots of really important information in there for data librarians like me and Jenny. So it tells us where you're putting your data. So if you're sharing it not in our institutional repository, in an external repository, which is where most data sets are, it tells us where that is. So that's the main thing to be aware of.
I would also just say, from someone that's been in the researcher's point of view as well, it's also really good practice if you're working on a group project to make sure that everyone's on the same page about what it is that you're aiming towards. If you have, for example, rules about personal data, to make sure everyone's kind of on the same page about what those are and how you can or can't share them. I think there's a lot of kind of blurriness, particularly around like anonymization and this new word that I learned the other day, pseudonymization. Ooh,
Yeah.
love that. Google that if you want to. But so yeah, it's just a good practice, especially on group projects, I think, to make sure that everyone's aware. And then especially if you have researchers join a project later, they have this one document that they can refer to and go, oh yeah, okay, great.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, I often question whether it's helpful to write a data management plan if it is just yourself, and if it is very straightforward in that it's a spreadsheet that you can just share openly, there's no issues. But it's still incredibly useful to document what your data outputs actually are and make sure that you've considered everything and made decisions about what can be shared. So that's really the essential point of a data management plan, is to prompt you to think these things through.
Yes.
If your data management plan is doing that, then it's a good one. But do you want to tell us what pseudonymization is for anyone listening who's suddenly curious? You can. It's another test question.
I know.
For Jenny.
Well, it's okay. My new friend in ethics was telling me about it the other day, so hopefully I'll pass it. So pseudonymization is where you essentially create a pseudonym for a person in a data set. So that might be either a code that you've assigned and that code is assigned to them all the way through, or it might be kind of like initials or a sort of different false name. And although obviously it is kind of protecting a person's data to some extent, in that you haven't revealed their actual name, it's not the same as true anonymization, because there is a possibility that someone would be able to trace all of those characteristics back and somehow work out which person it was, or so it's not true anonymization. So it's just something to be aware of, especially if you're dealing with kind of quite personal records, especially if it's kind of like medical records or anything like this. Obviously, we have to be very like on it with data protection.
That's it. Yeah, another 20 points for Jenny.
Oh, it's a great game show, this.
We should do an RDM game show.
Next Open Access Week.
It's a good idea. Okay, so shall we move on to the next question that we've set for ourselves? So I think it's one for me again.
Oh, yes. What have been the key challenges in putting together this policy? Okay.
So yeah, I've already mentioned my very elaborate game of chess. It's been like playing a very complicated game, which I'm not it's not a very good advert for this game show idea that we've had already, is it? It's terrible, it's complicated chess game show. So the key challenges have really been just putting something together that is a true reflection of what everyone at Lancaster wants and needs. Also kind of carrying on this data management plan mandate. So you've probably guessed that I'm slightly sceptical about this mandate that I've inherited, as whether it is truly useful for every single research process to do that. I think it is something we need to keep in, because one of the long-term things I'd like to introduce is moving away from static Word document data management plans into something that's much more machine actionable, in which case it'll be much more easy for researchers to put that together, and it will be useful in every case then, because we'll be able to map where people's data outputs are, and automate a lot of processes. So a machine actionable data management plan would be a platform that you would interact with, rather than authoring these Word documents that then might get filed away and never looked at again. It's much more like an active platform. So keeping that mandate going, even though the mechanism we've got for making it the best it can be for researchers still requires some long-term work. Thinking about that properly and how I might plan for the long term for that has been difficult. Also, what hasn't been difficult actually is just some of the things that haven't changed in there. So to kind of see that consistency over time and have things still be relevant has been nice to see and nice to carry on over. So an example of that is where we look at what happens if a researcher leaves while they've got active research data. So of course that's still the same mechanism where you'd have a handover policy. And then if for example, if we have a restricted data set in the institutional repository, the person who we would usually ask, so the original creator of the data set, so the person who we would usually send data access requests to, if they leave Lancaster, it defaults to the head of department or the named supervisor on there. So that's something that still works for us. And that's been relatively straightforward to carry over, and nice to see that that's still relevant and still working. So I think that's it for key challenges.
I think it's quite nice, isn't it, really, that we have these kind of, there is some changes, but there is quite actually a lot of continuity with the policy. And the main thing is to just say that if you do have any questions about it, or you're a bit worried about it for whatever reason, please do just get in touch with us, because we're very happy to answer them. And yeah, obviously there are a lot of kind of benefits to RDM more broadly, because having organised data obviously protects you against potential mishaps. And I'm sure Joe could tell you some horror stories. We won't dredge them up now, but it definitely, there are things that definitely happen which could be protected against in the future if you have a rigorous data management plan and also organisation about what it is that you were going to do with your project.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to include actually when we're looking at key challenges. So one of the things that we really need to plan for is what I've already mentioned at the beginning, is avoiding data disasters. So I won't tell any specific horror stories for things that have happened to people's data at Lancaster, because we're not here to terrify people. But yeah, that's one of the challenges as well, is that kind of scary area of dealing with legislation.
Yes.
And the increased cybersecurity risk that we're all under, just the increased number of kind of attacks and kind of different people looking for data, and just how difficult being a researcher is now. I really got a good appreciation of how hard researchers work and some of the challenges that they have to deal with. So just the competition between researchers and keeping your data safe as part of that is really tough. So building a policy that will help researchers keep their data safe is very important.
Exactly. I think also the other thing is to say is that, yeah, there is a lot of resources out there to help with that. So the worst case scenario for us is that we have researchers across the university that really are getting quite stressed about this and wanting help but not reaching out to us. So yeah, like again, if you want to advise, help with any of these things, we do have a lot of resources, as do ISS, as do the research services team. So yeah, please do just get in contact.
Yeah, definitely. We love RDM questions, or Jenny does. Anyway, she'll answer those for you now. Yeah. So shall I ask you the final couple of questions? Mm-hmm. So we've started to talk about this a little bit already, but is there anything else you'd like to say about the benefits of RDM for researchers?
So I think we've kind of touched on most of them. The main thing I think that we've not really talked about is kind of like preservation, really. And I think I see this a lot, especially in kind of the humanities, which is the background that I'm from, is that there is an ongoing problem of how to kind of preserve your data in the long term. And web archiving, for example, continues to be like a problem for many researchers, where you've created a website and then the funding runs out for the website. But the thing is that we actually have a lot of ways to kind of work around that, or advice about repositories that you can use, or good resources to think about how to share that long-term data, long-term archive data. That's what I mean.
That's it. Yeah, that's what I've called it in the policy.
Great. And really getting these things right, for example, the long-term preservation, it really kind of is the way that your research is going to be used in the future and improves the value of it in the long term. So it has these great benefits of, kind of what we said previously about like improving accessibility, generating innovation, all of these things. It's kind of a positive movement, I would say. So get involved.
Lovely. And that brings us on to our final question, which is, what services does the library offer to help researchers with RDM?
Well, first and foremost, you can come and interact with lovely people like us, obviously. Mm-hmm. So that's a huge benefit. But first and foremost, we also have some really good training, both online and in person. If you're, for example, a member of staff in a department listening to this thinking, do you know what, I would really love some in-person training in our department specific to our discipline, please do get in touch, because we do offer that, and are happy to come in and talk about specific challenges to your field of study. Also, we do one-on-one meetings as well to chat through data management plans, and we also have a data management plan review service. So that's where you can send in a draft, and then we can have a read through of it and basically add in any tips. We also have a lot of resources to help with specific types of data management plans. So there's this great resource that I'll just give a shout out to called DMP Online, which we really recommend, because you can tailor it based on each funder that you're using, which, it saves you a bit of effort in terms of trying to get the structure all right and re-inputting different information over and over again. So that's really useful. And yes, we can also help support you in terms of choice of repositories for that long-term archive data that we've talked about. Or if you choose to deposit it with the university in Pure instead, we can also support doing that as well. I think that's most things. Have I missed anything crucial?
And I think just in general, the query service that we have. So if you are putting together something for a DMP, or you just have a quick question, you don't want your full data management plan reviewed or anything, you can just email RDM at lancaster.ac.uk and Jenny will reply with the answer.
I will do. I'm quite speedy at it as well, so shout out whenever you want to.
Well, that's the nature of RDM, I find, is that you do need quite a fast turnaround with the reviews and with the queries, and we do build that in to what we do because people have got funding deadlines. Because we're the data outputs people, I often see that we kind of swoop in at the end and help you with your data outputs. So we're often sort of the last people that you would come and ask of to talk about what happens at the end of that research project. So we can answer fast as well.
I like the idea of swooping as well. It makes us sound like superheroes.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
We get our capes on, swoop in,
Yeah.
get that data output.
Well, thanks so much for talking to us today, Jo. I really appreciate it. And for also helping me explain the policy to others, because brilliant.
Well, thank you very much for taking over the role as well, and taking over letting everyone at Lancaster know about this policy.
Very welcome.
Should we say we'll have to do an official goodbye, I guess, now. So thank you very much for listening to our podcast. So this podcast is going to be released during Open Access Week. So I hope everyone listening has a happy Open Access Week from Jo and Jenny.
Yeah, thanks for listening.